All right. I would really like to welcome you all to this episode of In Flow with Soul. My name is Dr. Mary Meduna-Gross, and today I have with us Bobbi Lee Williams. Bobbi Lee is a plant and fungal medicine advocate, a cannabis chef, an herbalist, and a recovery warrior. She believes in the power of nature and is committed to helping share the earth's medicine. Bobbi Lee, I am really excited about this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. So let's start with what attracted me to you. And again, I found you through the Bossy Chicago network. It's a network of women entrepreneurs. And in my way of just getting connected and get to know the people that are in this network, I reached out to you.
Yes.
And when I did, I went to your website, of course, and I saw your story. I saw your story of recovery, and I immediately wanted to talk to you. Like, this is a fascinating story.
Oh,
But
thanks.
I would love it if you would start for us today by telling us your story, and then we'll get to the meat and potatoes later. But I would really love just to start with hearing your story.
Cool. Thanks. Okay, well, gosh, where to start? My journey has been one of, I've had a lot of hard things happen in my life, and a lot of, it sounds dramatic, a lot of struggles, and I had a really big move happen right when I hit puberty, about 12. So that was a really tough time to move, and moved across the country with my family. And the new environment was not, it was much more restrictive than what I was used to. And I experienced a lot of bullying in that environment. And I just started to have a lot of issues with my self-worth. And I started to have a lot of anxiety and gut pain, and I'd had migraines as a little kid, but they had gone away, and then they came back, and so the migraines became the first chronic pain issue that I started to deal with, and that was something that happened in in middle school. By high school, they were becoming more common, and I had a relationship start in high school that would last for many years, and it became very toxic and abusive, and there was a lot wrapped up in that. And by the time I went away to college, I was having these chronic migraines, and I'd started to be prescribed increasing strengths of opioids to help deal with the migraines. And I was also seeing a neurologist and a therapist and all. And so slowly over time, I'd become I was adding this list of pharmaceuticals to my, my rap sheet, or my list at the doctor's office. And it just was snowballing, this health issue of having these chronic headaches, having the opioids. They helped relieve the pain, but it's a very slippery slope. I was already a depressed young woman, and so having these opioids come on that would, it helped me feel happy and euphoric, and it took the pain away. And it's a deadly combination for somebody who is miserable and doesn't feel good all the time. So I very quickly developed an addiction to the opioids. And at the same time, I was on these neurological medications that are drugs really for the migraines also. So, but what they do is they help to, or they just really take away your a lot of intellectual ability. I remember my doctor telling me this drug is, we call it the skinny and stupid pill. And all I heard as a young 20 something was skinny. And I was like, oh, I don't care. It's fine. Even though I was a triple major at that point, which I only ended with 1 degree, but I was like, whatever, it's fine. I'm sure I'll be fine. And then, but what ended up happening was that I ended up having to go through the student disabilities office to take tests, because I could not focus. I couldn't do my tests. And when you're trying to take a chemistry exam, what do you do? It's already so hard. And I was just college was it was a struggle. And as far as having the these like drugs that were like affecting my brain capacity, and I was having all these gut issues. And so I got to my junior year of college, and I ended up studying abroad. I went on semester at sea, which is this incredible program where it's essentially a floating university. It's this converted cruise ship that the company owns, and there's like a group of really excellent professors that come on board every semester, and you sail. I literally sailed around the world when I was 21 and had this incredible experience that took me completely out of my comfort zone in so many ways, and just like took me away from like these environments that had been pretty toxic for me, and showed me another way. And so I found like it really inspired me to like think outside of, what all the constructs from home had been telling me I needed to do. And so, at that point, I was still like continuing on, like everybody else thought that everything was fine, and it was not fine.
Yeah.
And so like when I came back from that trip, my whole perspective had changed, and I was a different person. And I realized I don't want to go to medical school. I don't want to do that. I'm miserable already with this much work. I was almost to my senior year with 3 majors. So I was like I'd been so busy and just like, not taking the best care of myself to get through that in the midst of having like an ongoing opioid addiction. So just a lot of stuff was going on, and I had been engaged at that time, and my engagement fell apart. And then I sort of like spiraled, and I ended up having this moment with the opioids of like realization where I was facing either the needle and potential death or getting help. And like those were the 2 options that I came down to one day. And I realized like I don't want to die yet. I'm not ready to go down that path. I'm unhappy, but I don't want to die. And so like that's when I decided to ask for help and started the process of going to, like, I went to rehab, and I went to a few different programs, and like started to get that part under control. But if anybody who knows anything about addiction knows that it's never most times it's not a one-stop shop. Like it takes some time for you to be able to like actually stop using. And so, it took a few years, and like, but that was like the initial part. And then that was in 2010. And the next year I had dropped out of school, and like I had been trying to go back a couple times to school, but I hadn't really like had a lot of success yet. And then in 2011, things had really like snowballed at that point. And at the end of 2011, I had a complete psychotic break, and I was in a psychiatric unit for 3 weeks, just falling apart basically. And that was an extremely traumatic experience because I was at a few different hospitals, and the last one that I was at was not geared for recovery. It was really just like a holding tank for people, and like a place to be like super medicated. I don't even like to use that term, just to be like, they put you on a lot of drugs. You're a zombie. The doctors are like looking at you like a patient file. It's not a personal experience at all. It was very, very traumatic, especially because I was already there because I needed help, and like they didn't help, and made it worse. And so that was my darkest moment, as far as like, I don't know if I'm going to do this anymore, as far as like the life thing. And then, after I got out of the hospital, I went to my parents' house, and I lived in the basement for like 30 days. I don't think I went outside for an entire month. And just, I had this moment of like realization. I was 23 years old at that point, or 20, soon to be 24, I think. And I just realized like, this isn't what I want for my life. Like what's happened to me. I was so ambitious and like all these things, and, this isn't what I want. And to do. I don't want to stay in this basement my whole life.
Right.
And I was like, I think I'm gonna try again. I had this moment of like, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna do something again. And this is like the whole thing that my life is predicated on, is like that one moment of I'm going to get up. I'm going to get up off this couch and try again. And I remember like walking towards the shower because obviously I hadn't showered in like some days. And I'm like going to the shower and thinking like, why am I, this is going to be so hard if I try to do this, and why is it worth it? Why should I do this? And I remember, I'll never ever forget this memory or this vision of these orange flowers blooming, like just this vision of flowers blooming. And I remembered beauty. There's so much beauty in this place. And if I could just leave this basement, I will find some. And maybe I could like contribute to it too, you know? And so that was the moment for me where I started to try again, and I got myself in the shower. I went to Walmart to buy art supplies because I felt like making something. And I think that that's so illustrative of the power of art to heal, and to like, you know, the fact that that's what I was drawn to when nothing else had sparked me in so long. That's my truest nature, is that of an artist and a creator. And realizing that to help me shift away, like, because I was a chemistry major, so like there's not a lot of like drawing there except for like organic molecules, and like, you know, they're not a very creative environment really. And so I hadn't been super in touch with my creative self, and so that all that stuff happened. Eventually, I was able to finish school. I graduated in December of 2013. And I went to school in Kentucky. I lived there for several more months, and then just kind of like taking a little time to like gather myself. And then during that time, I was like, okay, I don't want to be a forensic chemist. I don't want to work for the government. I'll have to stop smoking weed. I don't want to ever have to like be forced to do that because it's so helpful for me. And so it was around that time that I had the realization of, I could make edibles. Like I could take my chemistry and and I love to bake. I've always loved to bake. I could make edibles for people. And I think that would be really helpful, because what if I would have had access to medical cannabis when I was dealing with all of this stuff? And maybe I would have never been put on those opioids, and I wouldn't have had to like stare death down in my mirror of like, don't do this to yourself because you're going to die. Like, you know, cannabis doesn't offer you that conundrum. It's more like, here's this thing that helps you relax and have like, remember to eat and feel happiness and laughter, and there's no withdrawals from it. And so that you know, that's how I got to that point. Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you. So you've been through these hospitalizations. You come home. You're on the couch. At what point did you turn to cannabis or other medicines again?
Yeah.
And what's the difference between a medicine and a drug? Perhaps the eye of the beholder, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But you described using cannabis as a medicine. So at what point did that become part of your routine?
Well, I had started smoking cannabis as a freshman in college. I mean, actually, I tried it in high school for the first time, but in college I started, and it was just social. I just liked how it felt. I liked getting to share that with people. And as like the addiction stuff spiraled, it was just another thing that I used to numb myself. I just layered it on with all the other stuff. But as I started to come off of the opioids and like some of the anti-anxiety medications that I was on, I started having these really bad panic attacks when I would smoke cannabis. And so but I'd already had to give up like the opioids, which helped me relax. So I was like, I'm not giving this up. And this is my own stubbornness coming into play. I'm not recommending anybody else go about this path. I would just say you need a lot more CBD. I didn't know about CBD back then. But anyway, I wouldn't give it up. And I started around that same time, I think, is when I started going to hot yoga. And I just started having more connection with my breath. And that helped work through the anxiety that I was having with the cannabis. And then I sort of hit this place of like, oh, wow, this is this thing that I can that I can use to really help myself relax and go deeper into my yoga practice, which helped my nervous system, regulate. And, and I was born in Colorado. That's where we moved from when I was 12. So my family still lives there. And so I have just witnessed like the like, oh, cannabis is a medicine. Like there's this medical program there. So like that always had been cemented in my mind from being from there of like, okay, this is a medicine. So my cannabis journey has evolved a lot from being, innocent to like over dependent to like trying to find some balance in there and like learning about how to balance with CBD and other cannabinoids. So that's yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like he's just started with experimenting with cannabis to begin with, then realizing how much you enjoyed that experience.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're getting more and more opioids and other drugs being diagnosed or prescribed for you because of your other diagnoses, right?
Right.
So it sounds like then there came a time when you decided, I'm going to take myself off of the pharmaceuticals. Maybe that's a better word we'll use to describe it, right? So what we're going to, you wanted to relieve yourself of the pharmaceuticals, and yet you decided intentionally that I'm going to continue with the cannabis.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And yes, and I have to say this, like I love how you put it, relieving myself from the pharmaceuticals. That's really good. Because that has been, it turned out that that's like what my whole, like the rest of my 20s turned into, is like freeing myself from their grasp. Because once you go down that path, it is incredibly difficult to come off of them, especially when psych meds are involved, because it really restructures how your brain functions, your capacity to like be available for yourself and others. So yeah, it's been a big journey. And I moved to Chicago in 2014, and then I think in just like a year later, like at the end of 2015, is when I started tapering down off of the mood stabilizer that I'd been on for like 7 or 8 years at that point. And then that was like took a whole year to come off the mood stabilizers and another year to come off of the antidepressant. And then it's been coming up on 3 years now, I think, since I've been off of everything. So now I'm totally pharmaceutical free. And yeah, and I have to say, like, if it weren't for cannabis and microdosing psilocybin during this process, like it's been so difficult. Like I don't think, I've had a great support system from my family, and I've basically been like, I couldn't hold a full-time job during that time. Like, it's been really difficult. To like take my brain back. And the thing that I want to underline about all of this is that, looking back, and this is my own personal experience, this is not the case for everybody, but I don't believe that I ever needed to be prescribed any of those things. I think that I really believe that plants and these mushrooms, they hold the cure, and like it's our birthright to use those plants. The government doesn't have any right to tell us like that a plant is illegal. Like they didn't create that plant or that mushroom. And so, I've been through all this stuff, and it's been hard. And some days I'm like, how am I even still here? Like, this is incredible. Cause I wasn't taking good care at certain points. And, all of that has led into me turning pain into purpose, and realizing like, okay, well, I went through all this stuff, but now I can use this to help other people find their own power as well, and to help hopefully prevent like our younger generations from going down this path. Because honestly, as an adult, the longer you're on these things, the harder it is to come off. And a lot of people are in a situation where they actually can't come off of them because they've been on them too long, and it's so painful and difficult and so destabilizing to come off of them that, some people just can't. And that's okay. Like, I don't want to shame anybody in any way. But I think the solution is like to not put our young people on these, give them better coping tools, and give them better spaces for ritual, and to connect with themselves, and to learn like how to use these sacred plants and mushrooms to help them anchor with themselves, and to not be swayed by society and whatever like the world throws at us. So that's really my mission. I just want to help. I want to help spread this awareness of like, we have other options. You don't have to go down that path of being a slave to the pill bottle and the pharmacy drive-through line.
Right.
There's more than that available.
You had mentioned earlier that your stubbornness kept you using plant-based medicines during your recovery process.
Yeah.
What gave you the confidence in these plant-based options to stick with it so strongly?
I think it was a combination of seeing what was going on in my home state and other states as well, but like Colorado and California were two of the first. So seeing like that there was like this whole movement, this whole industry being built around cannabis. It's like, okay, people are really taking this seriously. This is not like, the like reefer madness, like drama. This is like, people are really considering this as medicine. And so that combined with just my own experience of like feeling relief when I used it, once I got past like that anxiety peak that would hit me sometimes. So I think those things and just and it's comforting and it's hard like as an addict, like you to like give up all your vices. If you've ever been to like an AA meeting or an NA meeting, everybody's there with their cup of coffee and their cigarette, and we need something to soothe. It's like a self-soothing situation, and that like hand to mouth thing is very soothing for humans. So all that stuff together makes it an appealing thing, and I felt like it wasn't hurting me. It was, I didn't feel like it was hurting me. So
were you navigating these waters of cannabis and mushrooms kind of on your own, or did you talk to your doctors about that, or did you have to kind of run two separate treatment plans, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Well, the cannabis stuff came online way before the mushrooms. I tried mushrooms for the first time when I was 24, and it was right around my birthday, which I always thought was synchronistic, and that was after like all the hospitalizations, like just only like 6 or 7 months after the psych ward, and that was like totally. It was just me and a friend. It was somebody I didn't even know him very well, but he had just like brought it up to me in this way that sounded like really nice. And I was like always been afraid because like the mainstream thought around mushrooms is like, if you have psych issues, you should not be doing those. And it's, if you're on psych med, and I was still on the psych meds at the time, which actually is not advisable apparently, but I didn't even know that then. So yeah, it was totally unsupervised. And I am incredibly fortunate because I had such a beautiful experience that was so incredibly life altering. I will never forget that. And unfortunately I've fallen out of contact with that person, but he really, that was a huge moment for me. That changed everything. And I think that, to advise other people, I would say, use a little more caution, like do some more research. I just had that at that time. It was that potent mix of like, being naive and curious and open-hearted and willing to experience something new that created a really good environment for me. I was in a safe place. Thankfully, he turned out to be like a decent guy. So like, all those like things worked together to make it okay. But it was definitely not like, some supervised situation. And so like, that's where the work comes in for the people who are carrying this forward, is like, how do we make these safe spaces for people? Because while I had a good experience, others, may not. And, I've definitely had some experiences that weren't so good. So there's a lot of room for restructuring like the way that we like do these things and talk about them. But that's when the mushroom journey started. And that was like that was so incredibly like life altering for me. I just was lit on fire after that to like, make a difference.
So tell me a little bit about this first experience. What if you could, because I know sometimes these experiences, we lack the language to fully describe the experience.
Definitely.
At least that's been my experience.
For sure.
But it's also been profound, right? And so if you could describe a little bit about maybe like, what is your takeaway? How did you see the world differently after that experience? And that kind of changed your course?
Yeah. Well, for me and this psychedelics, this has always been what has kept me coming back to them, is what I experienced that first time that was the way that I felt God for the first time, feeling this love from something that was much bigger than myself, and this feeling of belonging, and this balance in nature of the God and the goddess, and how we fulfill those within ourselves, and how each human is like a fluid amalgamation of of each opposite, and and like just realizing like how much unity and healing can come from like just being with another person who is on a similar wavelength as you. So yeah, I grew up in a really Christian environment. I went to a private Christian school from K through 12. So there's not any room for that in those spaces. And, I tried my best, but much to my parents' disappointment, I think I didn't, it didn't resonate with me. Like it never connected. I tried to put on the face, like I tried to do the thing, but I was just pretending I didn't ever feel it, And so when I did it's not that I didn't believe in God, I just didn't resonate with that version of it, or them. And so, I feel like mushrooms showed me what God feels like, and what the goddess feels like that first night. There was very much like a goddess energy of, wow, I'm strong, I'm powerful. I have like magic inside of me. There's something really special here. And this is like my true state. This is how our consciousness is meant to flow, like in its optimum wavelength. Like music unlocks these boundaries of, like the flow state. I love like the name of your podcast. It's so perfect. So I think that's the main takeaway.
That's beautiful. I mean, a little mix of serendipity, the universe, God after you. Having the courage to look beyond what you were being told and taught. Like, this is how we do things.
Yeah.
Seemed to be a combination for your success to pull yourself out of the addictions.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I didn't know that the mushrooms were going to be such a help with that. But turns out, it's a huge help. Because if you love yourself, if you learn how to love yourself, it's much harder to like wound yourself in those ways.
Seriously. Like, I think we could stop the show right here. Like, that is the main takeaway. Right. When we love ourselves, then it's harder for us to hurt ourselves.
Yeah.
In many ways that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to say, like, it's an ongoing struggle. Like this is not like a one-stop shop. Like yesterday, today I'm looking like put together and polished and stuff, but you should have seen me yesterday. Like I had a meltdown yesterday. Like it was not pretty. Like, it's hard. There's ups and downs all over the place. There's, especially in this like climate that we live in right now, it's just crazy. So, but these things help. They help balance us back out, help us bring us back to ourselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
So let's talk then a little bit about your inspiration. So you're coming back, you realize that you can make edibles, you can be creative, use your creative skills. What are you doing now then with your business?
You mean like at that point or like today?
Kind of take me to where you started and then to where you're at today.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, well, at that point when I had that realization, I was still in Kentucky. So, finishing up my last year of school, my real senior year of school. And I just started playing with making, infusing cannabis into butter. I hadn't really gone like the dairy-free route yet at the moment. And so I was like just making regular like infused butter, and then like made my first batch of pound, like what they call like butter cookies. It was like a pound of butter and like one batch of cookies, and I just like, I don't know, I just started making them and like sharing them with my friends and like, I mean, honestly, it's like been a good way. It's been helping me like feed myself for the past like multiple years of like being able to share these with people and like, find a way. And so, it's evolved from there, but essentially like I've been baking cookies and wrapping them into tiny packages for people for like, a lot of years now. And it's gone from like being a little like, out, like a secretive
Sure.
thing to now being more like, I found now I'm living in Illinois. So like learning what the rules are here around regulations and stuff, and just finding like a gray area to work in so that I could stop like stressing so much and finding a better way to like interact. And so what has evolved now is that I'm working more in a capacity of like teaching people how to make their own, which is, I think, really empowering if you know how to make your own medicine and you don't have to rely on like the corporations to make it for you. That's really good. So like teaching people how to make it and I still definitely make edibles. But what I do now is I have the client provides the medicine. So now we have like all this access in Illinois. So people can provide it for me. I'm not providing it. So that's how I do things these days. And it's been working, although with COVID, it's been difficult, but
So what kind of shifts or pivots did you have to make with COVID?
oh my gosh. Well, a lot of my income was coming from doing events, and I've done some weddings, like some infused desserts for weddings. And I've done a lot of like teaching demos, like with an audience and stuff. But once COVID hit, then I couldn't do any of those things anymore. Like and like dessert tables for like events and things like that, aside from weddings and whatever. So like all that stuff stopped. And that was usually where I was making the most of my income, was from doing like an event. And so that happened. And, thankfully I have like some returning clients. And so like I've been able to like, keep that going. But it got really slow there for a while. And like, it still is really slow, especially right now, because January and February tend to be my slowest months after the holidays. So it's been a challenge. Like those, like the 2 checks that we've gotten have been extremely helpful. There's been like dipping into savings happening and things like this, like just like a lot of people, it's been a bit of a struggle, but like, I needed a break at this last year. I really did. All this stuff that has been going on, like I was operating as if those things, I just feel like there was a lot going on behind the scenes that like everybody else didn't know about. And this whole journey of like coming off the last couple of psych meds was like knocked me out. And so like when the COVID, like, the quarantine orders came down, I was like, oh, I just have to stay home. That's all I have to do. Are you serious? Like, I was so happy. Like, I was sad the stuff was going on, but I was like, oh, thank God I could just stay home. Oh my God, I'm so tired. So yeah, so, it's been tough, but thankfully, like I'm really, really privileged having like, a warm home and food, and I haven't had to worry about those things. And I'm really thankful for that, because I'm very aware that that's not the case for everybody. And so, my business hasn't like flourished this past year necessarily, but it's been good for me to be able to take the time to continue to recover. And like, PS, recovery burnout is a thing, which I did not know about until I experienced it. And so, finding
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, just like when you work so much on like your recovery and like unraveling trauma and all these things, like there's a certain point where you're just like, I can't do this anymore. It sucks. I'm tired. Like, it's painful. It's sad. Like, the triumphant moments, because there definitely are those, they're present, but when you're always digging into that old stuff, it at a certain point you have to like put it down. And
Sure.
so and I'm also like I'm a recovering perfectionist, I like to say. So I attacked recovery with that same like mindset that got me into like my situation in the first place. So, just like having to like learn how to be like, not be so hard on myself. I mean, that's been like such a big part of my process, my recovery process. So yeah, the downtime has been, really appreciated for me. And now I'm building another business, like a sister business for a CBD topicals company.
Okay.
And so that's like a thing that I'm shifting to, which I think is going to be great because I'm going to be able to get it out to more people. So
Tell me more about that.
yeah, so the topical thing is really exciting because it's a chance for me to practice herbalism. I'm definitely still learning, but I've learned enough to where I'm like, you know what, I can make some really solid things for people that are really gonna help and like it's like traditional herbal medicine. So just, we're talking like a lot of salves, like olive oil and beeswax and like herbal oils, and then infused with full spectrum CBD. So with the organic sun grown CBD. So it's I think people are really going to like it. It's a really thoughtful product that is just like, it's like all these like powerhouses of nature coming together into one like tiny little container. And to me, that is just like, that's what magic is. Like, it's really fun to get to work with like the herbs and the oils and make this like salve that's, you just, I don't know, you put it on and it like really helps. So it's just exciting to get to make that.
What kind of symptoms or problems would one of your salves treat?
Yeah, so we have a couple different ones, and we're still like testing things. So I don't know what the exact lineup is going to be, but I have two different pain reliever salves. One is like a cayenne and peppermint one, so it's like kind of like the hot and cold thing. And so there's that one, but that one you have to be careful with because you have to wash your hands after you use it, so you don't like touch your eyes or anywhere else that you don't want cayenne to be at. So, so there's that one, and then another one that doesn't have the cayenne is like an arnica and St. John's wort based one that is really good for like getting into those like muscle tension areas. So I have those two pain reliever ones. And then I just did a dry skin one that has things like calendula and chamomile and plantain and things like that are mixed in to help soothe the skin. I made lip balm. Yeah, and that one is really nice. I've been getting into using mango butter, which gives like a nice little gloss, but it like really nourishes the skin too. So I have a lip balm, and then I'm practicing with a migraine roller or like a headache roller. Obviously, migraines are something that I've really struggled with, so I thought like something that could like go straight onto your skin to like target those like pressure points and stuff. Unfortunately, I think the bottles that we bought might not be very good quality because it's not like working that well, but like the product itself seems to work well. So it was just like a packaging issue there, but we'll get it eventually. But those are like the main ones. And then we have ambitions for other ones. We want to make a personal lubricant or massage oil, which if you haven't tried those, try them because they are amazing. Yeah.
Oh, good to hear. I've heard that. I have not tried those yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, check it out. It's really good.
Definitely will.
Yeah.
So you have the cannabis infused baking has gotten you to where you are now. Now you are also looking to add in some of the CBD kinds of products.
Right.
As an entrepreneur, what would you say your biggest challenge is?
Oh my goodness. There's so many. I feel like probably for me, like at this stage, gosh, I want to say like time management, or just like, I don't know. I feel like I do okay with that. Maybe it's like, I think it might be my self-doubt, honestly. That's the hardest thing. Yeah. If I really am being honest, because I can do okay with my time management, but like, it's not perfect, but I can do okay with that. But like, I struggle with like doubting myself and feeling like I don't know enough to be doing this. And like just yesterday, my partner was like, you do. Like there is like no question that you know enough to be doing this. But it's you know, you have to like talk yourself down off the cliff sometimes of like,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and earlier you had also mentioned that you give yourself a hard time, right? And that you want to not be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this self-doubt is kind of in that same ballpark.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's that's something that I'm working on in therapy right now, of like unraveling this like self-worth issue that I've carried for a long time. So, you know, it's much easier to like not worry about these things when you're on a bunch of psych meds and like it's like,
Right.
oh, I'm just like floating above up here and like I don't feel all this other stuff and like, you know, and not to make light of that because everybody's on their own journey and it's not for me to like judge anybody else at all about that. But for me, that was not authentic. And so, but I think about that sometimes of like, oh, this is hard.
Yeah. Right. It is challenging.
Yeah.
But my message is that the challenge lies in the path. Now, we all bring our own limitations, right, to that path. But and to me, the challenges that we find along the path of entrepreneurship give us an opportunity to examine how we're holding ourselves back.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And decide, like, do I want to continue to hold myself back in this way, or do I want to let this go? Is it time?
Definitely. Well, that's like the doorway to success. If you're successful or not, like, have you been able to like navigate those blocks?
Exactly. So talking about being hard on ourselves and all those self-doubts, and the other thing that you had said about being hard on yourself, I forget how you connected it, but you connected it to rest. So is there for you a connection between the level of self-doubt that you experience and the level of rest that you've given to yourself?
I think definitely, because when I'm tired, I'm not thinking clearly. So it's much easier to fall into that trap of, oh, I'm not doing this right, or this isn't good enough, or whatever the narrative is. If I'm not fully rested, you know, it's harder to resist. So yeah, I think getting enough rest is so important. And like what I've noticed is that if I actually take the time to rest, but I feel guilty about it the whole time, then it didn't really do me that much good because I'm just sitting there like in a state of anxiety with my nervous system activated, like not feeling good about what I'm doing. So like it's not as helpful as if I as if I gave myself the space to just like chill and like be like, this is so good for me. Like this is nourishing me. This is helping me this is setting me up to like have successes elsewhere. And I think that's like a really important cognitive shift of like allowing yourself to rest and excising the guilt, because that's not, it's not helpful.
I agree with you completely. I'm experimenting with taking one day a month to, I call them Merry Mondays. And the only thing I do on those days is whatever I want to do when I want to do it for as long as I want to do it.
Nice.
Like I give myself permission to start something and then decide I don't want to do this anymore. And I've had one of those days now that I got to experiment with. And I want to come back to something that you had said earlier about, the guilt. And what I noticed is that in the morning, I had this rule. Okay, this is the rule that I'm going to follow. I had hoped to, get out and about, but it was cold yesterday and snowing, and it wasn't that committed to being outside. But then I didn't really have other things to fill that time with, and so all of a sudden, my house needed to be cleaned, and I'm not typically someone who loves to just go clean the house, but the floor needed to be vacuumed, things needed to be dusted, laundry needed to be done, dishes I found everything that I hadn't been doing for months all of a sudden needed to be done the day that I decided to give myself a day off. So for me, it was really listening to that inner voice. What is this? What is this? Like this is not really following my rules.
Yeah.
But what's that inner chatter that keeps saying, well, you have to do something productive?
Mm-hmm.
But when I heard you say that the purpose for this time is so that I am healthier and brighter and lighter and all of those other things that I want to be on the other side of the rest.
Yeah.
Right. So I appreciate that. That's going to help me stay focused and have a purpose, a very clear intention. Let's put it that way. A very clear intention for why I'm giving myself this time.
Yeah.
And whether or not I have activities to fill that time is irrelevant. It's really about just giving myself that time and space to prepare myself for work when I come back the next day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that that could be a game changer for a lot of people. And it's a practice. It's not something that I have perfected by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm trying.
So speaking of that, what is something that you committed to, at least for now, to give yourself this rest and restoration?
I think committing it's, I guess, maybe more of a state of being or consciousness than like an activity for me at this stage. Because what I found is like, I like to do a variety of things. So if I try to make like a schedule, like that's the first like indication that I'm not going to do it, because it's going to like end up diverting somewhere or like not sticking with it. And so I've realized like, okay, I like to have a little variety, and that's okay. So like adapting to that and just like really feeling into like whatever feels right to me in the moment. And like you said, like if I don't like it, like giving myself the permission to like leave and like do something else. But aside from that, I would say like just having cultivating a mindset of graciousness and compassion towards myself and others. I think that's for me like the foundational thing of like, how can I bring more grace to the situation, like when how I'm talking to myself, how I'm talking to the people around me. That's something that one of my friends mentioned to me recently, and that really resonated with me. Of like, yeah, that feels right. I would like to be kinder to myself. I would like to be more gentle and not beat myself up so much. So I think that, that state of graciousness is where it's at for me right now.
I love that. Very simple and to the point.
Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Well, tell us a little bit about what you've got going on. Where can people find you?
Yeah.
And what can you do for them?
Cool. So my website is bobbysbaked.com. I am also on Instagram. It's just at bobbysbaked. I have to confess, I'm not super active on social media, but there is a good collection of some of my work up there and some videos, and a link to a couple YouTube videos that I have that show some recipes. And you can go to my website to find out more about me, and also to shoot me an email if you're interested in custom emails. There's a contact form that you can send. I also offer virtual lessons now. So basically like a Zoom or FaceTime call, and we just get in the kitchen together, and I'll teach you how to make edibles or tinctures, sweet or savory, or all three if you want to do the full session. So there's a few options there, trying to make it affordable for people too. And that comes with a whole handout that I've written of like how to dose yourself, and how to like some different like baking tips, and how to work with RSO specifically. So I would love to teach more people. So that's something that I really would like to do more of. So thank you for the chance to talk about that. And then I also have, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website, and then I'll be sending out more information to the newsletter group about the topicals, like once that's ready to launch. So yeah.
That was very exciting.
Thanks.
Bobbi, thank you so much for sharing your story today, and about how your story has set you up for your business and where you go next. And in particular, your vulnerability and willingness to talk about being good to yourself. I think that's a message that we all need to hear more often.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for having me on. Oh, and there's one thing I would like to say, one more thing.
Okay.
Another takeaway is just to encourage people to invest in your own pleasure. I think that is something really powerful. Like whatever that looks like for you, whatever brings you pleasure, And there's a lot of different ways to experience it. Whatever that is, if you're going to spend money on yourself or time on yourself, invest it in your pleasure, because that is some deep medicine that'll help you reconnect with your joy and like your vitality.
Phenomenal. Thank you for that recommendation. That is beautiful. And I'm going to steal it and offer it to all my clients.
Yay, good. Okay.
All right, Bobbi, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hi, this is Mary. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope that you are coming away from this experience feeling a little more inspired, maybe a little more informed, or maybe just a little more rested. Overall, I hope you're coming away feeling more empowered. If you do, please give a thumbs up for this episode, subscribe so that you will not miss any future episodes, but most importantly, please pass this link along to your friends and to your network. Let's pass this sense of empowerment along. Thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate you.